Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Paris Air Show at this historic airfield, Le Bourget, outside the French capital, where our coverage is sponsored by Bell and Leonardo DRS. And we're here at Dassault Aviation to talk to the company's chief executive, Eric Trappier, who is also the chairman of GFAS, which is the Association of French Aerospace Manufacturers. Eric, it isn't an air show until we get a chance to talk. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, yes. Welcome at Le Bourget for another edition, 53rd. And well, everything looks to be perfect today.
It does. Despite the rain, it's still a very special place to be every 2 years. And obviously some very big news, which you guys are involved in. Obviously, the new next generation fighter program is off to a start. The manned portion of the SCAF effort that involves France, Germany, as well as Spain. And I wanted to talk to you about how to make such a complex program a success. Because there are those who are looking at this space and saying, you know, it's a tri-national program, and Dassault has a way of leading, which is usually from the front, and always working to try to execute something as quickly as possible at the end of the day. And you've even spoken to this to say, hey, we're not going to be the guys out front. We want to work together with our partners. What's the right way to execute such a complicated program? Do it quickly, both in a cultural change internally, but also among the partners to make sure this effort is a success.
Yes, number one, it's a very important decision because it paves the way for preparing the future. And for us, it's important for our design office, for our engineers, it's important to work on a next generation fighter. We are going to still work on the Rafale for the next 20 years at least, and then the Rafale is going to be up for the next 20 years later on. But it's good to prepare the future. Now, to answer directly to your question, I think that now that it's in a cooperation, we have before exercised this type of cooperation with a Neuron. Neuron was a demonstrator, a UCAV, stealth UCAV, and we were 6 countries and 6 companies. What is important is, number one, is we need clearly in a part of the deal to have a prime. So we are supposed at Dassault to be the prime for the fighter. And we have a deal with Airbus, and Airbus is supposed to be the prime for the big system, for the network, for the connectivity, and they will be associated with Thales also. So you see, for the fighter, Dassault will remain Dassault. We will remain a small design office, very effective, very flexible, and very with high competencies. And I believe that if we want to be at the top level of the fighters for tomorrow, we need to keep this organization. Doesn't mean we will do the job alone. We will share with other teams, the German team as well as the Spanish team, but we need clearly to have a leader in the arbitration of the different technologies in order for our fighter to be ops with our armed forces.
But you're still culturally a very Franco-French company. Do you think that that's going to become at all an issue when you're dealing with the Germans, for example, and the Spanish, who all have different sort of operating speeds at the end of the day?
No, I don't think so. We will adapt our way of processing. We will do like we did with the Neuron. That means that obviously when you cooperate, you need to talk also to different types of people. You are not anymore alone to do the job. But we need to keep this capability to reach very quickly the performance.
Talk to us a little bit about the performance of the airplane. What are the baseline characteristics? We talked to General Lavigne, the chief of the French Air Force, about what he's interested in the program as the design agent, as the prime for the airplane. What are the kind of capabilities you think at base the new jet has to have?
Well, we have to be back on the operational requirement. What is going to be the operational requirement in 20 years? I think one of the first one is to keep air dominance, to keep the capability to deliver a mission wherever the Air Force would like to do. So based on that, you need to develop one fighter, because you know we don't want to develop dedicated fighters for air-to-air or for air-to-ground. So we will develop one fighter to address all these capabilities, knowing also that for the French requirement, we need also to be capable of the aircraft carrier, which is another type of requirement. The most important is going to integrate stealth technology by keeping the fighter as maneuverable as possible for air dominance. But obviously, it's not only the fighter, it's also the weapons. There are quite a number of new developments in the weapons. In air-to-air capability, we have now the Meteor, but another one will come, and especially in the air-to-ground, new types of cruise missile or whatever. So that is going to be important. What is new now for the future is that we will also integrate UAVs, what we call a remote carrier, which will be led by the fighter, but will be around the fighter in order to be front to the threats. So this is new, and this is why also we need a network, because the missions now need to be in real time for all the objects which are on the target, meaning UAVs, refuelers, EW aircraft, MEL, UCAV maybe tomorrow. This big connection is really what is going to be designed for in the coming years. Connectivity.
Now, well, so from that standpoint, right, cloud combat or the combat cloud is something which the French Air Force is pioneering, and this new will be one of the foundational elements of the new jet. Talk to us a little bit about how you're connecting that again with Neuron. Neuron was launched in 2006, if I remember, here at the Paris Air Show. I remember writing about it quite a lot when Michel Alliot-Marie made the announcement at the end of the day, and that nations came together in order to develop it. But it's been a demonstrator. It's going to get operationalized more and more. Talk to us about how much investment is going into that part of the program to ensure that both of the aircraft in this, well, I should say even broadly, all the aircraft in this network are supported as much as the new fighter is.
Yes, we will continue to develop the technologies for the UCAV. Now it's up to the MODs to decide whether they would prefer to have a fighter with a pilot on board only, or to have fighters with pilots on board and UCAV without pilot on board but pilot on the ground, and how the efficiency of the complete system should answer to this new requirement, tough requirement, because you know that in some countries they are increasing and growing new defense, which have to be taken into account for the future.
Let me ask you about the value of stealth. Increasingly, we saw the Turkish fifth generation jet unveiled. It's stealthy. Russia is working on stealth designs, China as well. So once upon a time, it was an American field, but France also has that technology that it's developed very effectively. Again, we see some of it in Neuron. But Tom Kennedy, the chairman and CEO of Raytheon, recently said, the U.S., the stealth advantage is actually diminishing, and that there's more of a case to be made for better hypersonic weapons. How do you see the balance and the effectiveness and the importance of stealth today in this operating environment, which is becoming much more contested in terms of each advantage that, say, the United States or France has had?
I guess that there is not only one capability. It's not a pure stealth aircraft which could ensure the mission for tomorrow. It's stealth technology integrated into a fighter, which allowed the fighter to be seen at the last moment, let's say, and depending on what types of radar are going to target the fighter. So it's not only the stealth capability, it's also, as I said, the remote carrier. Maybe the remote carriers are going to be detected in advance. So the maneuverability will allow the fighter to have a certain path to avoid the radar beams. But it is for sure that in fighters environment, if you are seen later on, you have a big advantage. So, but you need also to keep your capability of maneuverability, of firing weapons with agility. So it's really something which is one part of the design, but not the only one. So if you can give a look on our mock-up, those who know the fighter's technology will understand.
Exactly. To a seasoned eye, you can spot it. Britain has launched the Tempest fighter effort, and you know well Britain's capabilities in the field because you guys were partnered with BAE Systems on earlier project. Talk to us a little bit about how you regard Tempest. The British look like they're trying to build their own coalition. but there are those who say that Europe can't afford to have two competing fighter projects, that at this point it's important to have, perhaps a more common combat aircraft. How do you see this? Is the British approach with the Italians as a partner at this point something that's more of a negotiating position? There are some who say that that's a more attractive program because it's moving more quickly and it has a pledge of £2 billion from the British government. How do you see it?
Well, we were with the British to design a UCAV demonstrator operational. We had the Neuron, as I said before, and they had the Taranis, which was another one. I would like you to try to compare what is the Taranis and what is the Neuron. That would be a good exercise. I think that it's not a matter of competing. If there are two projects in the future, well, why not? I mean, we had the Rafale and there was the Typhoon. If the future is to have two programs, fair enough. What I would like that at least there is one, because we don't feel that F-35 should be the fighter for all the countries. I don't think that's a good one. I think that we need still to develop interoperability among the partners in order to be able to join forces together, but it's not necessary to buy the same fighter. That's against interoperability. So let's see what the British will do. Let's see what we are going to do. We are going fast because the announcement to try to do something was 2 years ago between President Macron and Chancellor Merkel. 1 year later at Berlin Air Show, we announced an agreement between the two operational requirements, the French one and the German one, signed by the two air chiefs. At the same time in Berlin, Dassault and Airbus signed an agreement, and now 1 year later, we already have a joint studies funded by our two governments. We have the Spanish joining the program, and we have a new proposal given to our governments for launching a demonstrator. So I think it's going fast. It's going fast, and you know how Dassault is. We will not design or develop something which is not going to be answering the requirement of our Air Force and Navy. So it's going at the right speed. Many difficulties will be in front of us because it's such a big program that, of course, we need to learn to work with the German as French. We are doing it right now. We need to learn to work with the Spanish. We are going to learn to work maybe with others. Okay, what the British do with the Tempest is their matter, not ours.
Two questions on this portion of the interview. First, how many other partners do you see bringing on, and how far are you looking for those partners on the NGV? Is there a role, for example, for India or even Saudi or other Middle East partners? How do you see this consortium evolving?
Well, for the time being, it's only the German, the Spanish, and the French. Let's start really to work on a design, on a manufacturing of a prototype right now with these three countries and with the companies which are not only two companies, Dassault and Airbus, but it's Dassault and Airbus, it's Thales also, which is a big one. It's also in Germany, Hensoldt, which is electronic German companies. There are many others, and obviously with the engine, Safran and MTU. So it's enough to start with. If other countries want to join, our governments, which are already in the project, should say yes or no. Maybe tomorrow it will become a reference for Europe. Why not? But first, we need to develop something.
Let me ask you about a role for American industry on this. We spoke to Michelle Evans, Lockheed Martin's aeronautics chief, and one point she made is, look, she believes that, for example, a company like Lockheed would be able to help certainly on the interoperability because the F-35 has become almost a European jet in a sense, given that the British, the Italians, the Danes, Belgians, Norwegians are all going to be using the aircraft. And obviously the jury is out what happens with Turkey, but Poland is also interested in the airplane. Do you think there's a role for American contractors to work with the SCAF team in order to work some of the connectivity and interoperability issues?
Frankly speaking, I don't think so. Why? I think that the Americans are pushing the F-35, fair enough. I mean, we cannot say anything, and we are not against what the Americans do. But at the same time, the Americans should recognize that the know-how we have put in our capabilities here in France, for example, with the Rafale, and the Rafale is operational everywhere, side by side with the American fighters. It's good for America and it's good for France. If France tomorrow is France and Germany, it's good also. We need to have strong allies. We should not be only buying the F-35. That is not very correct in my mind. So I think the type of budget which are spent in America are enough for Lockheed. We need here in Europe also a kind of effort by our countries to develop our own defense capabilities and our own defense technical capabilities, which we have done before for the last 70 years. And I think that it has nothing to do against Lockheed or against the American or whatever. But do you think that really we can share the design of the next generation fighter in the US as Dassault? I don't think so. So we need to exercise our competencies here in Europe.
F4, you mentioned the importance of the Rafale program is going to exist for decades. The F4 is that next generation of connectivity. You guys have been very successful with the Rafale program. Talk to us about the F4 as well as what the outlook is for Rafale on the export market now. Obviously, the India competition is ongoing, but where else do you see opportunities for the airplane?
Yeah, number one, F4 is going to give to our armored forces new capabilities. And for example, connectivity. We are going to increase connectivity and capabilities of our fighters to be able to connect with the new data links or whatever. So it's a very important matter. Then we continue to improve the sensors. We continue to improve the type of weapons which can be carried and fired by the Rafale. So this is the F4. Most of these capabilities will be, when it's available, proposed also in the export version. And we hope, and we do hope that new countries will join the Rafale team.
Speaking of export, let me just ask you an NGV-related question. Is the jet being designed at the outset for exportability and to be attractive on the export market, or is it being tailored for the requirements of the three partner nations?
Yes, I think first we are going to concentrate our efforts on the requirement of France, Germany, and Spain. But obviously, we need, because we don't have the capability to have this huge number, which is with the domestic market of the US, we need export to extend a little bit the number of aircraft which can be manufactured by the companies.
You are also upgrading the maritime patrol fleet. There's a big demand for that given Russian activities. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of that program, because folks have not been thinking about maritime patrol aircraft, but now everybody is focused on the issue. Talk to us about the importance of the program and what you're trying to achieve there.
Yes, looks like the Russian submarines are back at sea, and it's very important for France to get maritime patrol aircraft. Why? To protect our nuclear submarines, and you know how important are our nuclear submarines for in terms of nuclear dissuasion. So we have the Atlantic 2. I'd just like to remind that the Atlantic was the winner of a NATO competition, which was bought by France and some other countries, but not by the US. And we have designed the Atlantic 2. We are now delivering the new version of the Atlantic 2 to the French Navy with the new standards. We have improved the sensors, acoustic sensors, and radar in order to be more effective to detect the submarines. Is going to be delivered for French Navy in the coming days, and this is the backbone for maritime patrol for the French Navy. For the future, we need to prepare what could be the future. Maritime patrol, what do you need? You need to detect submarines, so you need to go fast to the point. You need to be able to drop a certain number of sonobuoys and get the right sensor to be able to analyze and detect and track the submarines. This is what we are going to prepare, but it's quite very confidential studies also to prepare the future. Are we going to be interested to develop a new aircraft or a new system for the future? There is an interest, again, by France and Germany, which has been decided. We are just starting the studies.
Last two questions. One, nuclear strike. How important a requirement is that going to be for the new fighter? Because France will need to update. Certainly the Rafales are doing that mission now. The Tornado was doing that for Germany. And there was a little bit of tension associated with whether or not the US was going to be okay with that mission being done by any other jet than an F-35. How important is the nuclear capability of the new NGF, excuse me?
You know the concept for France. The concept is we are totally autonomous for the fighter as well as for the weapon, and this should continue. So we are not like in the same type of constraints as Tornado or Typhoon or other. We don't rely on the US for our nuclear capability. We rely on France. So that should continue.
Last question, business jets. It's been a tough market, but the 8X, as all of your Falcon line, is not only high-end executive transports, but also have military multi-mission capability. Walk us through where you are on the business jets. There was an engine problem, which unfortunately was something that did become kind of a tension point with Safran at one point. Walk us through what the business jet outlook is and which one of the products are going to be the most attractive as multi-mission military airplane.
Yes, our bad experience is behind. That was what we call the 5X. We changed totally to the 6X with new engines from our colleagues of Pratt & Whitney, and it's totally in line to be operational in 2022. So we are really preparing the future for the Falcon also. We want to expand the range of our capabilities and new programs, and this is on the way. As far as the Falcon for military missions, I think it's quite important. We are developed the Japan Coast Guard Falcon 2000. We are going to sign a contract with the French government to get Falcon 8X to replace the old Transal Gabriel for EW missions. And we are going to sign contract in the coming months also for maritime surveillance with Falcon 2000 and a new system. So it's something the Falcon with agility and flexibility range is really well prepared to answer to these new requirements, and you know that surveillance is something which is important also.
Eric Trappier, the CEO of Dassault Aviation and the chairman of GFAS, the Association of French Aerospace Companies. Eric, thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.